Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about homebrew versus house rules. And if you're as confused as I am, that's okay. Saul will explain it all.
There's nothing to be confused about. We've talked about homebrews and house rules before. I don't think we've ever really talked about it as a subject by itself on our podcast. So here we are. We're talking about it in 2022. Happy New Year, peoples.
I was supposed to say that. Happy New Year.
For me, a homebrew, let's define each one. A homebrew is where the game is either entirely made up by a person or made up the rules and the setting and everything, or it's based on an existing game, but it has been changed really massively that it's almost unrecognizable. Maybe there's some core game element or mechanic, but it is really like a completely different game.
So, are we talking about homebrew?
Homebrew, right.
Pretty close to the definition I found online.
Well, what is the definition online?
A role-playing game played using house rules or devised entirely by its participants.
Well, there you go. Correct. So I got a little story to say. So I tell you people.
This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
So years ago, and I'm talking years ago, like, well, more than 40 years ago now, I think. So I was about 10, 40, almost 45 years ago.
Okay, dude, just
so anyway, my brother is in high school. He's going to high school, and he's going to high school with this guy called Andrew Leaker, who was also a role-playing game guy. And they went to Salinas High, and later on I went to North High. As he got older, my brother is 5 years older than me, so he was just getting out of school, or like in high school, and I was in junior high, and I was going into high school myself. I was entering high school, he was leaving. Anyway, he was playing with this guy called Andrew Leaker, and they played games, Dungeons and Dragons. But Andrew had this homebrew. It was a science fiction fantasy game, and I think it was based on originally Metamorphosis Alpha or Tecamel, right? So he liked, I think it was Tecamel for some reason. He liked the idea of Tecamel, this strange world, but he didn't like some aspects about it. So he changed the world, right? So he's literally changing the setting and made a whole new world. Weird and wacky, and it was very imaginative. At least my brother was play tested in that. Well, he didn't play test it, he was just playing in it. And as the years progressed, I guess he decided to actually make the game. So somehow he got in contact with a guy in my high school, North Salinas High, called Miles Tevis. And Miles Tevis was a high school artist, right? And he was absolutely amazing for a kid in high school. He was an amazing artist, right? So somehow they knew each other, even though I don't think Miles played D&D.
You digress.
Yeah, I'm digressing, but I don't think they ran in the same circles. But anyway, an artist at the level of Miles Tevis probably got the attention of Andrew Leaker, and Andrew Leaker decided to make the game. It became Jaroon, the role-playing game, and Miles did the art for it. So the reason the whole reason I talk about Jaroon is because I think it started as a homebrew, right? It started as Leaker playing his own version of Tecamel, but he threw out the rules, right? Then he threw out the setting because it wasn't to his liking. And here is the totally new, and he published the game. I think it went through 3 editions. Well, I know it went through 3 editions. And there you go. You got this homebrew that actually became a published game. So that to me is a homebrew. I mean, there's other examples of homebrews, right? Like Zweilander, right? That guy, he was playing Warhammer Fantasy and just changed it up a little bit. He changed the rules, and you could see that there's a core mechanic of the D100 system, but he added all these rules, and then he had his own world, and bada bing, bada boom, you have a homebrew that has been published. So that story is recurring. There's a lot of people do that.
But I'm gonna say that I think that most homebrews aren't published.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's true.
I mean, if it starts out as a homebrew because you liked a certain system, but you don't like the setting or the rules, then that a homebrew, right?
Well, I think you can like the feeling of a game, right? Because Jaroon is kind of reminiscent of Tecamel, right? You're on this distant world colonized by humans, And humans don't necessarily represent the apex,
the main population.
Right, and or the most strongest population. I think Jolene has that same kind of flavor. And I've never played Jolene, so I've only owned the book or the box set. You see this reoccurring a lot where homebrews become publishable material. And the only difference between everybody else's homebrew and the ones that get published is work, right? These people work at it. They want to do it, and they have a little bit of drive to get this done.
Besides work, maybe their homebrew isn't good enough to be published. Maybe they need to polish it like a lot, or
there's that,
or nobody likes it. But now in this day and age with Kickstarter, if you can find people that like it, then you can probably get it published.
You don't even need to do Kickstarter anymore. You can just self-publish. Like if you go to Drive-Thru RPG, they literally give you the tools. They go, this is the system we used for you to get published, to publish your own stuff. This is the fonts. This is the typesetting and all that stuff. You still got to do it yourself, but there's tools that they give you to do it. So, like I said, it only requires work. I remember my brother years ago, because I think everybody who plays a role-playing game long enough likes to tinker, right? So we were playing D&D, and he just came up with this percentile system. Now, he really liked percentile systems. I don't know if it was based on space opera or influenced by...
When you were saying that, I was just thinking, well, he loves space opera, so that's probably...
Well, there was other games like Call of Cthulhu. I don't know if he played Call of Cthulhu back then, but that's a percentile system. So he came up with his own percentile system. He came out with the rule. I don't remember how many pages, all handwritten on binder paper. And we played it. We played it a couple times, and he came up with own experience and all this other stuff, levels. I don't know how many pages it was, but it was playable. You don't need that many pages to have a playable concept.
Obviously not. Now they have role playing games with 1 page rules.
1 page
and
rules.
It's not really 1 page. It's like half a page.
Some of them, yes. We talked about lasers and feelings, right?
Yeah.
And that's been incorporated into all kinds of different games. And some of them sound kind of fun to play.
So really, a homebrew is completely different than just house rules.
Yes. Also, let's talk about house rules, right?
Yeah. That was the segue.
Good job. Right. What's the difference between that? I think in house rules, you're just changing little things. Or they could be table rules too. For example, I have a...
Okay, let's just be clear. Let's clarify this, because Saul and I had a discussion about it. House rules versus table rules. House rules have to do with the game. Table rules have to do with the actual meeting in person and playing together. I guess it could be online too.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that.
Oh, you're right. But in this case, I think it's a house rule.
Okay.
But it's sort of a table rule because it affects the player. Well, everything affects the players, right? My most famous, I don't know, famous, but my longest running house rule is I don't allow evil characters. So is that a table rule or is that a house rule?
I think that's just a Saul rule.
Yeah, but if you're going to put it as a table rule?
I'm going to say that it's a house rule because if we're talking about D&D, there are evil. You can roll up an evil character,
right?
But you're not going to allow it in your game.
Characters of evil alignment.
Yeah.
Well, this usually now it doesn't matter, right? Because D&D 5th edition it downplays alignment, right? And I think they're talking about 6th edition coming out, and I think they're going to totally do away with alignment system in 6th edition. That's my theory. No reason why. I have no paper trail.
I think even if they do away with alignment, it's still kind of ingrained in a lot of the old school gamers, right?
Oh yeah.
Because when you're creating the character, alignment kind of gives you an idea of how you're going to play it, right? You're going to play it chaotic good. So really you're going to do good, right? But you're a little bit chaotic, which I think most D&D players are chaotic.
The player or the character?
Both. Mostly the character, because that's when you can let out your creativity, right? You can do crazy stuff that you wouldn't normally do in your daily life.
I think you're right to a certain point that most people play good characters. I mean, it's just usually that is, if you look at published adventures, you're supposed to be the good guys,
the
right?
Heroes, yeah.
Right. And usually you do stuff that if you were an evil character, you wouldn't give a crap. You're like, no, I kill you instead if you want me to go save the princess or whatever the deal is.
Well,
right?
There's some, and we've talked about horror stories. We've never really experienced them about games where people did want to play evil characters and they killed each other in the party and stuff like that. Which I'm like, okay, well, why would I want to play with you if you're going to kill me?
Yes, that could be another house rule or table rule or house rule. No P versus P, no player versus player combat or situation. I think that might be a little bit, I don't know, though that's never really happened in my games. I don't think it has, where a player attacked another player. Can you remember?
I said I didn't remember that happening.
Yeah. I don't remember any players of mine going P versus P, or player versus player, which is, a lot of people do. A lot of people who play evil characters will go after their own party. It's usually a thief, right?
Okay, I was just thinking that sometimes there are thieves or rogues in our group that will take stuff without and not share it with the party, which in our party's estimation is a bad thing because they're all in it for the money.
Party.
The group.
You're talking about the player group, the players, or the party? That's
both.
How do you separate the party from the player?
But there's all kinds of house rules. Like I was looking up house rules, and there were things like for D&D 5th edition. This one guy says you can only roll stealth if there's a possibility that you're going to be detected doing something. You can't just roll it to see if you're stealthy and make it through without anybody seeing you, because why should you waste a roll unless there's a chance that the guard, like if there's a guard there that's going to see you, then you can do it. I don't know. I don't agree with that rule, but whatever.
Well, I don't even understand that. I mean, if somebody wants to roll stealth
only at the moment of possible detection.
But how was a player to know?
I think the GM would have to tell him.
Right? Oh, he would say, don't worry about it.
Yeah. You're good. No one saw you.
There's nobody here.
Small enemies share hit points as a squad and attack as one. I've never thought about that, but we usually do that. Like we were playing Feng Shui mooks.
Yes.
The mooks usually attack as a group, right?
Right.
Because there's 16 mooks, and you break them into groups of 4, and then they attack each 4. They have a chance. You roll for them to attack those 4 people to see if they do it.
Correct.
So that's unwritten house rule, I guess, that we do just to make it easier, so combat doesn't last for 6 hours.
Well, there's some rules that actually account for that stuff, right? They say group people, like Savage Worlds says that.
There's all kinds. I don't know.
Oh yeah, there's no. I think you get the picture that there's the house rules. It could be from anything you can think of. There's a house rule. Mine was because I didn't want evil characters, right? And I think at the time we were playing 3.5 we were playing Pathfinder. And one of the players wanted to make an assassin, which was a player class. And I'm like, well, you really have to be evil to be an assassin, because you're killing people for money.
Didn't he make a reformed assassin?
No, I said you can't play an assassin.
Okay.
It's just I don't allow evil characters, and he was a little bit miffed, and then I think Steve tried to say something about his dad was saying that he's going to be a reformed one. I go, well, I just don't want to get into that era. There's one. We were playing with my son too, who was 3 years younger than him, and he was only like 10 or 12. So my son was 8 or 9. I go, I don't want to get into that gray area of role playing, And I think the problem I have is that way back in my day, again, I'm going to the way back machine. We were playing AD&D at the Scout House, and there was a scout. He was a scout. He was a Boy Scout. His name was Stan. I don't remember his last name. I do remember his last name, but I won't say. But anyway, he had my other friends decided who were running decided to run a campaign. It was called the staff campaign, right? So they go, bring your highest level character, which my highest level character was like 3rd level or something. But Stan had like a 9th level character, and he was this chaotic evil dwarf, right? And Stan was the most freaking chaotic dude on a play, at least he played that way, that I had ever played with before, right? He would do anything, if it was chaotic and crazy, he'd do it, including attack fellow players, and he would bully people because he was really high level. And I'm like, So it was really weird, and I got this idea that he played that character, or he played that chaotic evil, because he just wanted to be a crappy player, right? Be a crappy player to people,
right?
Do crappy things.
So that's probably why you don't like playing with evil characters.
So it was this idea that if you want to play chaotic evil, or any evil, but chaotic evil, you just want to do crazy, crappy stuff to your fellow players. And I'm like, I don't want that, because it caused problems in the game, right? People got mad that he would do crazy things, and not like if we were fighting as a group and we're fighting a group of monsters, he would like, oh, I'm gonna go look at the treasure. Like there'll be a treasure chest, and so they would. And then as the GMs, they would distract him, because he was probably the most powerful character in the game. And then but he was also very it was very tough to role play, to handle him, the character, as the GM, because he was just too powerful. And what was funny is that it was multiple GMs running the game. It was Mike, his brother, and their friend Rick, and they learned to hate that character because he was just too powerful than everybody else in the group, and he would roll over the monsters. So they devised a plan to kill him, and they actually killed this character. And then they made him feel like crap, because it was this like a harpy on a bridge, kind of like the evil bridge in the, what was it, in the Monty Python? What is your favorite color and all this stuff? So, but the harpy, there was only one, and he attacked it, but there was a whole swarm of them. So they were able to make him fall off this Lahari bridge, and then they roll. The funny part, they don't really mean. The funny part was to see how many times he bounced. So he bounced like 6 times supposedly, which caused all kinds of damage, and he died. So I think things in my youth have definitely colored how I look at things in my later on while I'm playing and running games. So from the very beginning, I've never allowed evil characters.
When Ian wanted to play that assassin, you were using the game to try to teach the boys how to be nice to people and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. A little bit of morality in there. Yeah.
So, because I remember you made him cry when you killed his character once when he did something that his character deserved to die for, right?
So you agree.
I wasn't there at the time, but then you had another character heal him and bring him back to life.
Well, the character, okay. So the situation was he had this big cat because he was a druid, like the size of a saber-toothed tiger or something like that. It was a huge cat, and so he would use it to attack and stuff like that. So at one point, they come across this princess who's escaping her father's evil, controlling wrath, and they come upon this scene of she's trying to escape, and she's kind of like fighting, but she's not fighting. She's just trying to doing like what do you call it? She's doing like non-lethal damage and stuff. So the players get involved.
They got to save the princess.
The goody two shoes. So they start battling, and then at one point they knock down the main guy who's chasing her, who she knows because she's lived in the what is it?
Palace.
In a palace his whole life, and so that was her protector guy, and he was gonna go and bring her back, right? I mean, this is like literally just outside the city gates. And so they knock him down and they knock him out because he was the named character. And then Ian tells his cat, feed upon this guy who's down. And I'm like, you sure you want to do that? I told Ian. He was a kid. And now people, well, anyway, so I'll finish the story. So I go, you sure want to do that? And then she says, don't you dare do that, because that's somebody she knew.
Right.
And she goes, you will pay if you do that. I told him, you will pay if you allow this beast to kill that person, that man. So he goes, feed. And so the cat kills the dude. So she throws a lightning bolt at him and kills him. Right? And she's all, lightning bolts are. He failed his saving throw. This was Pathfinder. I'm pretty sure.
Pathfinder.
And she could, the 8 die.
Yeah.
8, and she rolled really well. I rolled everything in it open, and I totally killed him. I mean, he was beyond dead. Instantly, he started crying. Right. So then I made it so like she gets shocked that she did it out of anger, right? That's what I'm saying. And it was kind of a little, and I just said, and she seems shocked, so she goes over there and she saves his life, right? Brings him back to life. And then she leaves. She hurries off. So they chase her, and that character became you, the character you played,
I know.
right? So at that point, I'm like, and he was upset, and I remember being 12 or something years old, and everybody at the table was like eyes, and my son Augustine and his younger brother Alan, they were like, their eyes grew really big, and then Augustine goes, "Well, she told you not to kill that dude," and it was a teachable moment for me. I was like, man, do I really want to? The chances of her killing him was good because they had been in a fight, and he had taken a little bit of damage, and druids don't have a lot of hit points, and usually they use their animals and their wild shape and stuff, right? And he didn't. He was an open target, so I nailed him hard. And anyways, so he learned that when certain consequences for your actions, right? Like this guy, he didn't need to kill him.
Right.
There's absolutely no reason. He was out of the fight. He was knocked out, and he was just being a vicious person.
12-year-old
vicious person. And I checked his viciousness. If it was Pendragon, he'd be checking his viciousness. And I'm trying to run a game for adolescents at this point.
Well, and the boys weren't even 10 yet, I don't think.
No, they're 3 years younger, so they were like, well, he was 12, so he might have been 9. They were 9. I thought it was good because like everybody learned at that table, right? Including Steve. Well, you do crazy stuff, and I tell you not to. Me, as the GM, acting through my NPCs, tell you
Don't
better check
that.
your stuff.
Yeah.
I think they probably learned a little lesson about me dropping the hammer on them.
Well, that, and I think that Ian always wants to, and Ian is like a lot of people, right?
Push the envelope.
You read these character classes and you go, I want to play that character class.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
I think that's a cool idea. And Ian really likes to come up with unique characters. And in Feng Shui, that we just played a game of Feng Shui.
Yes.
And he picked the old drunken master.
The drunken master, yes.
Which I go, because the old man is ancient.
There's an old master, but there's the old master, but he's.
But you can have 3 different kinds of old masters.
Right, he's usually the drunken master archetype.
And he was doing it really well, right?
Right.
But he likes to pick unique characters to play.
Yes, and he's a good role player. I mean, he's a good role player in the sense that he tries to role play. Yeah. I'm not saying that he's an excellent role player, but he does good job because he tries, and for the most part,
and he thinks about this is what the character would do, and he does it the way the character would do it, right? Which is really good. But I think that comes with a lot of experience too, not only from playing with us and his mom and dad, but also with playing with like the other group that he plays with. I forget.
I don't know who he plays with.
The Friday night group that they play with.
That's right. That's right. He does play with his dad. He plays with that other games on Friday night.
And that kind of opened his eyes to there's all kinds of different role players.
Right, and different ways of playing.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
So as house rules, your rule is no evil characters. There was a reason you did that because you didn't like evil characters from being a kid, right? When you were playing. And also from playing with kids, trying to teach them small moral lessons, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and I've never been too, me myself, and I guess I shouldn't judge other people by myself, or think that other people think the way I am. I'm like, why would anybody play an evil character in a group of like good characters, right? Like I remember people playing paladins, and why would an assassin be hanging out with the paladin? Now that would make an interesting story if they were friends, but that type of stuff doesn't usually happen.
They could have been childhood friends and they went separate ways.
Correct, and maybe the paladin's trying to reform
because that's what a paladin assassin would do,
and especially if it's his childhood friend. There's all kinds of role playing aspects that you can work out, and I think that makes for a better game. Unfortunately, I don't think for the most part people who play evil characters, that's the intent in my mind, because I think it's Stan.
So most house rules aren't quite as people may make house rules for different reasons than Saul. Like the GM doesn't roll the dice behind a screen, so everybody can see what's happening. You can use an inspiration or whatever you want to call it, point of to re-roll or something, or maybe nobody dies, or death is always on the table.
Well, the GM's guide for even D&D, it's loaded with all kinds of options, they call it, and those are basically what I would consider house rules. Just put in print.
Yeah.
I mean, because to make the things greedier, there's no such thing as a short rest. A short rest is 1 day, and you recover a partial number of hit points.
Yeah.
A long rest is like a week.
Yeah.
So it really that would really change the game of D&D. Instead of this almost superheroic, I just got into a battle.
I'm going to take a power nap, but I'll be 100%.
Not even a power nap. What is it, a half hour or something? I just I take a breather. We need a breather, like those orcs in the movie. And so we could take a short rest, and then we could recharge and keep running for like 3 days.
I think a lot of people see that as not feasible, right, in real life. So they go, well, I can't imagine that just a short rest is going to give you back your hit points or make you feel like going, right?
Because the hit points has changed, right? In original D&D and AD&D, it was actually, people envisioned it as wounds.
Right.
Right. And then Gary Gygax toward the end, when he was still controlling, I think it was Gary Gygax toward the end, when he was still controlling AD&D before he got kicked out, he was leading toward the idea that, no, hit points are not wounds. It's a mix of luck. It's a mix of stamina and all these other things
and experience.
And all this, what happens is as you lose hit points, you get tired. You get little nicks and bruises, and that starts to wear you down to the point where you get knocked out. It's this cloud of all kinds of things that represent you going down as a character. It's just not wounds. It's just, but that's what it were. I mean, when you roll to hit, right? That was the hit table. So when I hit and do 5 points of damage.
Where do you hit? There's like,
D&D ever had one, but there's other places that do. So those are house rules or options. I call them house rules. That there's a whole bunch of them inside the GM's guide for
a house rule that I would like to have is that the 5 foot. When somebody passes you within 5 feet, they can attack you, but nobody will go for that one in my group.
No, they have that.
I know that. Well,
they used to have that. I forget when. There's a certain situation when you go through somebody's zone. I don't know what they call it. I should know. In D&D, we're talking D&D.
When you disengage,
you can disengage and not get attacked. Yeah. Right. That's the whole. You're carefully getting away from combat, which is kind of weird.
I see it as taking steps backwards to get away from the sword coming at you.
You can't see my wife, but she's like hunched over and she starts moving her arms like she's doing some sort of weird dance.
I was walking backwards.
Okay. Sitting in a chair. I understand. So I think house rules, there's a ton of them, right? And they range from something small to something that's a little bit more will impact the game. But I think it doesn't change the game enough that it doesn't change that it's not unrecognizable.
Just taking rules that you don't like or situations you don't want and enforcing that.
Right. Like I said, house rules, I think for changing little things.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you still recognize it as whether it's D&D or, that's still Savage Worlds or that's still whatever game that it's based on.
Some homebrews, you probably can recognize that it's still part of that. But
yeah, I think you're right. No, there's some homebrews like Zoolander, right? You can see the roots of it being from Warhammer.
Well, I can't because I've never played Warhammer.
Well, that's true. You haven't played Warhammer, but it's very reminiscent, right? It's like what is it? What do people say? It's like Warhammer with the serial numbers rubbed off, right?
That's not nice. Someone put a lot of work into that.
Well, Zoolander, the guy changed the rules enough, though. He added all kinds of rules and stuff like that to make the game a little bit more, like it needs to be more chaotic, but more, there's a power dice that's not in the original
rules.
Warhammer rules, right? So, house rules, homebrews, I think they're definitely a part of role-playing games and forever will be. Because people who play role-playing games like to tinker. I don't think that I've ever come up with my own homebrew or changed rules enough to make it a homebrew. Felipe has, like, he had that homebrew system. I forget if he based it on anything. I don't remember. But I do remember it was percentile dice. I do remember he wrote things out, and I do remember playing it. And I think we had a great time doing it. As long as people are playing role-playing games, there's going to be homebrews and house rules.
There you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
You have a good day.